Don't you think it's time to start unfucking yourself and getting out of your head and into your life? I thought so. And that's why I went and interviewed Gary John Bishop. This is part 2 of my conversation with Gary John Bishop. Hi, I'm Rebecca Zung, top 1% attorney and the best-selling author of the books Negotiate Like You Matter and Breaking Free, a Step-by-Step Divorce Guide. And I've helped thousands of people go from lives of drama, trauma, and chaos to step into lives of freedom, possibility, and purpose. And I do the same thing for you right here in these videos and on this channel and in these interviews. So make sure that you subscribe and hit the notification bell, and that way you'll get notified every time I upload brand new content. So without further ado, let's dive into part 2 of my conversation with Gary John Bishop. So a lot of my people, my followers, viewers, listeners, subscribers, they're dealing with divorce, or they're dealing with divorcing specifically a high conflict personality or a narcissist or somebody like that. And so, you know, one of the things I talk a lot about is that the personality that is often targeted or victimized by a narcissist is usually an empathic person, but also a person who has their own sort of wounds, like maybe they deserve to be treated poorly, or they deserve, they maybe had a narcissistic parent or something like that. So how does that person who just feels beat up by the world, beat up by the person in their life, like they can never win, they can never turn it around, they can't get out, there's no way out. Yeah. How did they start making these shifts in their self-talk and in their ontology?
Well, I mean, my approach to it is not going to be like the way a lot of people would approach it, because ultimately all I'm interested is in freedom. Like, can you get free? Can you get on the other side of something?
Now, are you talking about physical freedom or mental freedom?
I'm talking about we say stuff like I should let something go, right? I mean, everybody says that, well, you'll have to get over it. Sometimes people will say, yeah, but how do you do it? Like, how do I actually get over it? How do I actually get free of something? Right. And so when we're in situations like, for instance, say a dysfunctional marriage or a dysfunctional relationship, right? However you're framing that for yourself is how it will live on with you. So you don't get to say, oh, that was traumatic and I got da, and then free of that. You're now going to carry that around with whatever language you've used to hold it for yourself.
Right.
And that's true of all of us for all of our past. Your past lives on in the kind of language you've used to capture it. Mm-hmm. So it lives on in your thoughts and that selection of words and phrases that you've used to capture it for yourself.
Yeah. And in a way, that's the only way it lives on, because it's not here anymore. It's gone.
That's really powerful. That's a powerful place to start, by the way, what you just said there, like really powerful. Like it only lives on in language. Now, in language, though, you have an emotional attachment to language. So that is, in the speaking of something, both to yourself and others, your emotions will rise and fall in the language you use, right? So for some people, they'll say, oh, this has been the worst day of my life. And it might not have been, right? It might have just been a tough day. But in the language, you'll have an emotional state, or as I just called it, a way of being that matches that language. So it would do the first step I would say to somebody is you got to get really present to, really checked in with what's the language I'm using to talk about this. And is it empowering me? Not like, because sometimes people think, well, yeah, it makes me kind of, screw them. That's not power, right? That's more like kind of resentment. Power is when you can say, I've released myself from that. I'm no longer attached to that. That's power, right?
Yeah, yeah.
So then you really got to look at, well, what's the language I'm using, and what's the language I could use, right? That would allow me to kind of put that in a better spot for myself, such that I can move on. Now, it seems like sometimes people think this is just semantics, but absolutely your past lives on in the language you use to describe it, right? So that's how it lives on in your life. So you got to be careful for two things. One, you might have been victimized, but it's incumbent upon you to make sure you don't become a victim, like a way of being.
Or continue to be.
Right. You got to, like, I might have been victimized about something. That's okay. But that does not diminish who I am as a human being.
Right.
Right. And at the same time, like from that moment on, when you have those moments where you want to kind of look back, or you want to just blame, or you want to just be, because that won't serve you, by the way, in terms of fulfilling on a brilliant future for yourself. You can't keep looking back and like they did and I should have, and none of that'll serve you. Right. That'll just grind it on and grind it on and grind it on for you. But rather than starting to put it in perspective for yourself in a place that empowers you, it's got to empower you, right? And one of the worst things I think in my experience, I think you can do is turn yourself into the triumphant victim, because it still lives on.
I love that, triumphant victim,
right.
or even triumphant, survivor.
Right. I mean,
use a different word than victim. Right.
Like, at what point do I say I'm over it?
Yeah.
And that really is what you're looking for. You're looking to get to the point where you can look at that time in your life and there's no attachment for you. Like, you don't experience anything in terms of like negativity about it. Yeah. So that's why it's important for you to come to terms with the truth. It's important for you to tell the truth to yourself and be straight with yourself about it. And then don't give yourself permission to use it to justify your future self. So you can't give yourself permission to like, oh yeah, well that happened, so now I'm off the hook for it. No, you can't do that, because that way it's still living on for you.
Well, the thing is, though, I think that for some people I know who are listening, they're going to be going, but I'm still in it. He's still victimizing me, or she's still victimizing me. They're still treating me this way.
Yeah.
So it's hard sometimes to, get past the gunfire when the guns are still aiming at you.
Right. So, but at the same time, you got to realize, like, so if you go into Starbucks, for instance, it always smells like coffee, right? There's no time you go in there and you're like, oh, it smells like an oil refinery in here. It always smells like coffee. And discourse and upset and divorce, more often than not, it's not a good smell. You got to just come to terms with, this is how this is. Now, one of the things that actually kind of put me on the map a long time ago is a statement that I made online. I said, you have the life that you're willing to put up with, right? Now, that seems kind of harsh, and I know it seems harsh to people, right? But that's our big problem as human beings. It's our willingness to tolerate certain things in our lives, including ourselves, by the way. Mm-hmm. Like, I tolerate myself. I tolerate no voice. I tolerate that about me. Now, that's ultimately what you'll be burdened by. Whatever you're tolerating about yourself, you'll be burdened by that. You'll find a way for that to get expressed in life. Right?
Yeah. Yeah.
So I say to people, look, this was a long time ago, actually, I had a client. The guy said, he was going through a divorce, and it was very, very messy with him and his former wife. And then eventually I just said to him, what do you want? Do you want a fair divorce, or do you want a divorce? And he said, well, I want a fair divorce. I said, okay, well, we're going to be here a while, and that's fine. I just want you to know, like, that's how it's going to go. Which went on for a few more months, and he just said, I just want a divorce. And they divorced within, I think, 4 weeks.
Well, I mean, in some ways I say fair is for the Ferris wheel, because F is for the Ferris wheel or whatever, because, it's fair is different depending on who you're talking to.
Exactly.
I mean, every single person who comes in my office says, I don't want to fight. I just want what's fair or whatever. And then everybody has a different idea of what's fair. So they end up fighting, of course.
Exactly.
So, okay. So I want to just, talk about, you have this idea where you use assertions rather than affirmations. And I wanted to talk more about that. What does that mean?
All right, good. So it's a good question. So some people like affirmations, like really work for them, like they just love them and they use them all the time. But I've met a lot of people in my time who just they just don't believe them. They just don't believe the affirmation, right? Which is part of the problem with them, because the idea of an affirmation is to overcome something about yourself, right? So something about myself that if I say this often enough, it'll supersede that thing. It'll overtake it. An assertion is a very different thing. So an assertion, there's a process in an assertion. It begins with acknowledging what first is here, right? So I might think, say, I don't think I'm smart enough, right? So that might be my initial thought. And I'm kind of in that world. I'm not smart enough. I can't do it. It's too much, you know. So I acknowledge all of that. And then I ask myself, well, can I be responsible for that? That's here. Can I be responsible for that I'm in this negative state, right? When I get to that little point, which actually doesn't take like more than a minute, all right, I can be responsible for that. I'm in this negative space right now. And the very next moment, I'm going to stake a claim for myself. I'm going to like draw a line in the sand, and I'm going to make an assertion about myself, right? And I'm going to act in alignment with what I'm about, what's about to come out of my mouth. So I acknowledge what's here, I set it aside, and I stake a right now in this moment. And in my first book, one of the things that I talked about was a state of willingness, of being willing. Like I am willing, right? Sometimes you have to kind of get yourself there, for instance, to kind of open up the pathway for willingness to happen. And sometimes it starts with, I'm currently unwilling to be willing, right?
Yeah.
But something weird happens in language when you do that. See, when you start to see, and I'll use that as an example, when you start to see life in terms of your willingness and your unwillingness, your life is no longer circumstantial.
Yeah. Yeah.
You're actually opening up to the idea that you have a say in how you're going to take this on. Yeah. And to me, that's the beginning of all great transformations. It begins with, you start to realize that you've got a say. You got a say in your own experience. You got a say in your level of commitment, your level of happiness, your level of joy. You have a say in it. It's not always easy, but you have a say. And when you get that toehold of having a say, that's a muscle you can work. You can grow that. You can become much more powerful with your experience of being alive.
Yeah. Yeah. I mean, I think language, what you're saying is language is everything, right? I mean, I go back to in the Four Agreements, the book, The Four Agreements, it talks about the power of word and be impeccable with your word. And it even talks about how in the Bible, in the beginning, there was word and the word was everything. And you know, what I'm hearing, the theme of what you're saying is your words, whether they're your thoughts or how you're actually expressing them through the words that are coming out of your mouth, is so important in shaping your destiny. Is that fair?
Critical. You can't, people think it's semantics. People who say stuff, well, I didn't mean that, when they say stuff. You know, sometimes when I'm talking to people, the truth will out, right? But they don't realize it's the truth they're saying.
Yeah.
They just think they're talking about something, but you'll hear things in there. But if you actually just think about your average day, you say a lot of the same kind of stuff to yourself. You get a lot of the same opinions, a lot of the same beliefs. You know, an interesting thing to me is when you ask someone about this notion of self-limiting beliefs, you don't know your own self-limiting beliefs. You believe them. It's not a self-limiting. You can see somebody else's, like, oh, that's a self-limiting belief. That's not true. To oneself, I believe that. And all of that is wrapped up in language. Language captures life. It captures life. It captures experiences. It captures objects and time of the day and time of the year. And language captures all of that. And we're able to relay it all to each other through language. So it's a little shallow to think that our sophisticated use of language isn't somehow, we're not emotionally connected to that. Of course we are.
Yeah. So you have 7 powerful assertions you use to unfuck yourself. Can you give us like what you think, just a couple of them right now? Yeah. I know I didn't ask you to like memorize them all. Maybe you have them all memorized. I don't know, but give me like 1 or 2 of your favorites.
Well, one that serves me almost every day in my life is I expect nothing and I accept everything. Now that people sometimes hear that and they're like, oh my gosh, what a doormat, you know. But one of the things that I did notice in my life a long time ago was the kind of degree to which I was hooked by my own expectations, like how I expected things to go. And then when they don't go that way, I would get derailed. I would be like, well, what happened? And so over time, I've become much better at just kind of seeing my expectations and setting them aside so that I can just be with life the way that it is, right? Expectations can really derail, for instance, a relationship. We're expecting each other to be certain ways, right? And then they don't. And then we get all messed up by that. And then, off it goes. So actually starting to key into some of your expectations is a pretty big deal. But then the other part of that is I accept everything. That is, people think if I accept something, it means I'm not going to change it. No, it means I'm no longer to be emotionally charged around it. I might still act to change that thing. I might still step in there and make, serious life changes around that thing. But I'm not going to be run by it emotionally. I accept that the way it is.
I love that. I love that.
But at the same time, I'm changing it. But I'm just no longer going to be run. So,
I just even love the phrase, I'm not going to be run by that emotionally. Right. Just even that right there is so powerful.
Yeah. Yeah. Cause you can't. And to me, that's like there's a lot right now about being aware and being woke. To me, a lot of that's not really accurate about what the whole notion of being aware is. Being aware is being aware of oneself. It's being aware of what I do and why I do and what's behind that and what are my hooks and my triggers. Where do I get derailed? Where do I get flattened? Where am I looking for something that's not there? Which we all do, by the way. We're all on the hunt for little reminders of what we should care about and not care about. So for me, awareness is really this profound awareness of oneself. And it's not like there's a point where you're at that, like a destination. It's more like that's what I do. I get a little more aware of myself because I believe that every time you uncover a little something more about yourself, it gives you an opportunity to push in a little bit more into the unknown, a little bit more into the kind of expanse of your own humanity, and to really experiment with the human being that you are.
I love it. So I just recently read Tim Ferriss's book, Tools of Titans. And one of the things that I loved in his book is that he asks people to tell us what your spirit animal is. So I started asking that. So I didn't prepare you for this question. So I'm just curious, but just right off the top of your head, what's your spirit animal?
All right. That's funny because in my first book, I talked about how stop telling yourself you're a tiger because you're not a fucking tiger. But I don't know. I mean, I guess I can't really think of one off the top of my head, but I'm thinking probably like badger or something, like some small, angry little.
A scrappy fighter.
Scrappy little, like, fighting his corner, taking on the big guys, doesn't care, like that kind of deal. Yeah.
I love it. I love it. So where can people find out more about you?
On my website, www.garyjohnbishop.com, but I'm also on Twitter and on Instagram. I really love the idea of giving people stuff, like insights and ideas and questions for them to really look at their life. I don't think changing your life should have to cost you a fortune. I think it's a pretty easy thing to give away to people, and I love doing that.
Yeah, you've got tons and tons of information on all of your social media outlets, lots of free information, I noticed.
Yeah.
So for helping people. So thank you so much for being with me here today. I really appreciate it. This is so fascinating, really fascinating. Especially love that you talk about ontology. That excites me so much.
Yeah, good.
All right. Thank you so much.
Thank you. Bye-bye.
Thanks for watching this conversation with Gary John Bishop. I'm so glad that you were here. If you like this video, give it a like, give it a share, drop me a comment, let me know that you were here. And if you're getting ready to negotiate with a narcissist, go ahead and grab my free Crush My Negotiation Prep Worksheet. Don't walk into a negotiation without it. You can just get it at the link below or go to winmynegotiation.com. And if you're dealing with narcissists or any high conflict personality and you want to be with other people who are dealing with that and support each other, come on over and join me in my free private Facebook group. It's called Narcissist Negotiators with Rebecca Zung, and I'll drop a link to that below as well. If you haven't already subscribed to my channel, now's a great time to do that. Just hit subscribe and hit the notification bell, and then you'll get notified when I upload brand new content. I'm Rebecca Zung. I'm so glad that you were here and that you stopped by my channel. Remember, today is a great day to start negotiating your best life. I'll see you in the next video.